Good afternoon, everybody. This is my name is Richard Flinton. I'm the Secretary of the Association of Local Government North Yorkshire and York. And this is a meeting of that association. It's an association that brings together all councils in North Yorkshire and York, along with the two national parks within the county boundary as well. I'm going to be introducing the first two items, the second of which is the election of a chair for the meeting, which I'll hand over to that new chair. The first item is just to confirm apologies and any substitutions that we may have for the meeting. So over to Ruth to do that, please.
Thank you, Richard. There is one substitute in attendance, and that's Councillor Liz Collin, who is here in place of Councillor Steve Siddons from Scarborough Borough Council. We have 4 apologies for absence, and they are from Councillor Mark Robson, who may be able to attend and might be a little late. We have apologies from Neil Heseltine, who's the Yorkshire Dales National Park Authority Chairman. We have apologies from Stacey Burlett, who's Ryedale District Council Chief Executive, and Tom Hind, who's the North York Moors National Park Authority Chief Exec. We also have in attendance Helen Simpson, who is the Chair-elect of the local LEP. Thank you, Richard. Okay, thank you for that, Ruth. Item 2 is the election of chair for the meeting, and we would normally set a chair for the year of the association in the July AGM, but due to the coronavirus pandemic, we've been operating in an informal way up until this point. We do have the next meeting of July, our next AGM, when we will once again elect a chairman for the forthcoming year. So we do have the issue of attending to appointing a chairman for this particular meeting. Keith Haspin has been carrying on informally chairing the meetings to date. There is a suggestion that Keith carries on in a formal role, but I do need a proposer for Keith or an alternative proposal if that's the wish of the meeting. Councillor Collins, would you like to come in?
I would like to propose Councillor Aston, please.
That's very good, thank you. Councillor Les?
That's seconded.
Great. Is everybody okay with handing over the chair to Councillor Aspen? I can see some nods around, so I don't think we need to take a formal vote. I think the nods are sufficient, and I'll hand over to you, Councillor Aspen, for chairmanship of the meeting.
Thank you very much, and thank you, colleagues. It was nice to see nods instead of heads being shaken on that item, so that's appreciated. I'll take us straight on to item 3, which is declarations of interest, just in case there are any declarations in addition to those in our register of interests that anybody wanted to declare. I'll give a couple of seconds for any virtual hands to appear, but I can't see any, so there are no additional declarations to declare. That then takes us straight through to item 4, which is the minutes of the meeting held quite a while ago now, our last formal meeting, which was the 6th of March 2020. They're included between pages 3 and 6. Are there any errors or matters arising from those minutes that anybody wants to raise? If not, I will suggest that we accept those minutes as a correct record, and I'll take the absence of any virtual hands or waving hands in the screen as consent to accept those minutes. So thank you very much, everybody. Agenda item 5 is the York and North Yorkshire LEP project pipeline, and in a second I'll hand over to James Farrer to present that, but I just wanted to pick up on Richard's comments at the start of the meeting and welcome Helen to this meeting in her role as the new chair of the LEP. So you're very welcome, Helen. Thank you for coming to join us. I don't know whether you want to say anything first before James introduces the report. Helen.
Just thank you very much for the welcome, and I've met some of you already. I think we have meetings in the diary for most of those of you I haven't met yet, so really looking forward to working with you. Thank you for the welcome.
Thanks, Helen, and over to James.
Thank you, Chair. So I just want to go through the report and talk briefly about the LEP performance. Then we'll move on to the LEP capital investment plan. But also I'd like to take the opportunity just to update the board on the recent recruitment exercise for the LEP board, for LEP board members alongside Helen as the new chair. So if we look at performance to start with, we are reaching the end of the LEP's local growth fund. So you'll recall the LEP had a £145 million growth deal agreed with government, which ends in March this year, so at the end of this month. I'm really pleased to be able to report that we are bang on track to 100% deliver that. That means money invested and spent, and the outputs are now in the process of being delivered. We did actually overcommit the fund to make sure that we could hit the end of year targets, utilising our Growing Places Investment Fund to mitigate that. And we're currently forecasting that there'll be about £2 million of that Growing Places which we'll need to utilise. It might be slightly more, but the important thing is we agreed a £145 million growth deal with government. We will have delivered it 100% on budget, on time, which I just want to take this opportunity to thank the work of all your teams. So many of the projects have been delivered by the local authorities as the project sponsor. And I think it's given that the challenges we've had around COVID in the last year, we will have delivered near on £40 million in this last financial year, which for a region like North Yorkshire is a lot of money. And it's been an incredible effort by everybody, not least the staff and teams in the local authorities. So I would just like to put on record what a good performance that has been and how grateful we are for the effort and work that's gone in on there. You'll also then recall that we got an additional 15.4 million allocated last summer from what's called the Get Building Fund. Half of that, so 7.7, needs to be spent by March, and we're bang on track to do that. We have a list of projects there. There's 10 projects agreed for delivery, of which 7 are now fully contracted, and the other 3 are at the final terms and conditions and will be ready to go anytime. So again, we secured an additional 15.4. We are bang on track to deliver on time, on budget, and deliver the bounce back from the COVID that we so desperately need. So again, another really good performance with regard to that. The other strand to the LEP kind of delivery is the Growth Hub, which is our business support function. Again, it's been a huge job this year responding to the impact of COVID and engaging businesses. And we've blown every target out of the water there. But aside from the numbers, I think what's been really important, the step forward this year, has been the collaboration. So the partnership work between the local authorities, but the wider business representation organisations, so the Chamber, the FSB, Welcome to Yorkshire, and wider partners. So that collaboration has been really strong. And it allowed us to reach over 13,000 businesses this year, with nearly 1,000 accessing direct business support from the LEP. So that's been good. And more recently, we received some additional funding in December to support businesses as the UK left the EU. We've been doing that work joint with Leeds City Region, and York and North Yorkshire businesses have been engaged. So there's been over 750 businesses already engaged. We're still on with that project now. I think what's interesting, it's in the paper, is if you look at the issues that are coming through. So whilst we're engaging them about the impact of leaving the EU, actually workforce, data and digital and intellectual property regulations and standards, there's a broad range of different issues which have been raised with business and which we've been supporting them with. So where businesses have come into us with key issues, we've been providing them with one-to-one support to try and help them through that. So again, that's mid-project, but it's going very, very well as we seek to mitigate that. And finally, we have a Careers and Enterprise programme. This is about providing careers and enterprise support into schools to make sure that our young people are getting business-led careers guidance and advice. We've had to completely reconstruct the project due to COVID and deliver it online. We recently, or just before Christmas, ran a digital careers day where there was 21 schools took part in the day with 2,600 individuals, so kind of 14, 15-year-olds, but actually a further 8,500 have viewed it online. So over 11,000 people have actually viewed that. And I think what's been really interesting is what the digital mechanism allows us to do is take some of our really great employers, so the likes of Drax, Anglo-American, Greencore, McCain's, and actually whilst they may be located in one location, we can actually allow the advice and guidance they bring to actually be spread right across the whole of the patch. So again, what digital enables is that people who perhaps would normally struggle to get in front of the likes of those big organisations is getting access to careers guidance they wouldn't previously get. So I think it's been a real positive from the kind of impact of the lockdown over the last year, and it's something that we'll certainly look to do going forwards. Moving on to the kind of capital investment plan. So we've been working collectively with all your teams for a number of months now to understand what the future pipeline looks like. We invested 800,000 last year in feasibility work, around 20 different feasibility studies, which are all in the process of coming to an end. The initial focus of this was to kind of aim at the Levelling Up Fund and Shared Prosperity Fund, which when the paper was submitted, we didn't know anything of what it was going to look like. Obviously, it came out in the budget this week, so I'll touch briefly on that in a moment. But this, working through the Director of Development and Chief Executives Group, the way we've structured our future investment plan is consistent with the way we've structured the devolution deal. It's consistent with the way we've structured our local industrial strategy and our COVID response plan. So it's very much about investing in our quality places, in business and people, and then in a green future from that perspective. As I said, the aim of this when we developed it was with a view to the Levelling Up Fund and Shared Prosperity Fund. You will have seen that come out in the budget this week. So the Levelling Up Fund is effectively one project or one bid can be submitted from each MP's constituency. So for York, that means there'll be 2 bids that could be submitted with you having 2 MPs, but then it's one for each district council. So it has to be submitted through the district council, but the number is limited to the number of MPs you have in your patch. And obviously it's aimed at that. So we've done some good pipeline work. And obviously we're keen to work with the districts and the City of York to understand how we can support it and make sure we get the most money possible into the region as we bounce back out of COVID. So there's up to £20 million per bid allowed. We need to make sure the bids that go in are as strong and compelling as possible. They have the support of our MPs, and obviously with all the intelligence and that we've got within the LEP, we're happy to support all your teams in helping you put your bids together around that. The timescales are fairly stretching, so it's important that we kind of move quickly. Government also announced in the budget something called the Community Renewal Fund. This was the precursor to the Shared Prosperity Fund. So in the budget back in November, government announced £220 million of funding that previously went into the EU to go into this fund for this financial year. And the Community Renewal Fund is how that money is going to be allocated. So it's for skills, it's for business support, it's for communities and places, and it's to get people back into employment. Again, there's a really tight deadline, so the bids have to be submitted by the 18th of June, and the bids have to be submitted by either a unitary council, so City of York, or the county council in North Yorkshire, so it'll be North Yorkshire County Council. Again, as a LEP, we're there to support you to get that through. The requirements of what you need to go through before June to submit that is pretty stretching. So we're going to need to collaborate and work closely together to make sure we pool all our resources and make sure, again, that we get the most compelling bids in that we possibly can. Just looking at the wider capital investment programme, so that the pipeline work we've done, we've got in excess of 230 projects on it. I shared within the document, so I won't go through it in detail what those projects are and how they are grouped together. Obviously, as we look at future funding that comes out of government, we'll look at how best to package the different projects together to make the most of it. But what it does give is a good sense of the investments there, and assuming we can negotiate a devolution deal, it gives a good kickstart for actually implementing that devolution deal and understanding the capital projects that we would want to accelerate in our patch. So it gives a good sense of where we're at. There is a lot of work to be done to get the project investment ready, but I think we're in a really strong place around that. And finally, just onto the LEP board and LEP funding. So the LEP have had confirmation of its core funding for the next year, 21-22. So this remains static at £500,000 and is subject to the current levels of match funding we receive from our local authorities. In addition, the growth hubs have had their budget confirmed, and it's £536,000 actually is the exact number that we're getting for York and North Yorkshire. And we'll be looking at how we deliver business support and maxing that, working in partnership across the patch. Just from a LEP budget perspective, in previous years, we've been able to take some funding out of our capital budgets to support the team. Obviously, with the local growth fund coming to an end, that isn't available. So we are having to kind of be really robust with our budget management, but we have a clear plan in place which sees us comfortably through to the next financial year and actually stands us in good stead with regard to having a solid budget all the way through to when the planned combined authority is going to be implemented in March 2023. So as a LEP, as a team, I think we're in a fairly good financial position to be able to work through to that period. We have been recruiting to the board. So obviously, Chair, you kindly introduced Helen. who's our new chair and takes over on the 15th of March when we have our board meeting. We've actually been recruiting to the wider LEP board, and the board papers will go out this evening and identify who that is. So the three posts on the main LEP board who have been successful is Bruce Heptonstall from Drax Power Station. It's Helen Bowden, who's the chair of the theatre, Stephen Joseph Theatre in Scarborough, and Sue Jefferson, who's got a strong food and drink and a women in leadership background. They're subject to ratification by the board on the 15th, but they're named in the papers going out. We have also been recruiting to our business and skills board. And again, I think what's been really impressive this time has been the strength of candidates. So we actually could have filled significantly more places than we had available. But looking at who's been appointed, we've got business representation from York, Harrogate, Helmsley, Ripon, across the three boards. So it's really strong representation from across the patch around who are coming onto our boards. And they're all really good, strong businesses with a strong kind of commercial background, which has some real weight to what we're doing. The final thing I'd just like to say is you will all be aware that the LEP is a formal consultee on the local government reorganisation. We will be discussing this at our LEP board on the 15th. We would anticipate that the public sector members of that board will need to excuse themselves as conflict of interest at that point. But just so that you're aware that we are sharing the full submissions from both North Yorkshire and the East West proposal with all our board members, and we'll be discussing it on the 15th before we finally submit it before the deadline date. I'm happy to take any questions that anyone's got around any parts of that.
Thank you very much, James. So happy to open it to any questions or comments from any colleagues. Just raise your virtual hands. Two from me, James. There's a paragraph in and amongst the budget documents that talks about working with LEPs on a future review of LEPs and how to drive recovery. And I could say they love tweaking around with LEPs. Do you know any more than that paragraph and what that might mean, if indeed anything, for our area? And then the second question, you'd mentioned the building fund projects. Really pleased to hear about that progress, and just to ask for a little bit more information with regards to the Digital Skills Academy at Askham Bryan and what it means by committed but waiting for a board decision. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll pick up the latter one first, which is probably the slightly easier question. The Digital Skills Academy. So obviously we have to get things in place, so we have planning and other issues kind of sorted out before we can give formal approval and subjective approval. So we've got the business case in from Askham Bryan now. That's gone through the board and has been accepted. It's got one or two kind of subjectors, which we're just working through those terms and conditions to make sure that they're ticked off before we contract. But we knew that timeline right from the word go. So this isn't a surprise. It's not that it's behind schedule. We understood where it wasn't within that process. Right back when we submitted it, so it is bang on track. It's going through the terms and conditions and ticking off the conditions before we can formally issue the contract. But it's almost there. But it's a really good project. It's about digital skills for the rural economy, which is obviously Askham Bryan's core territory. So I think strategically it's hugely important to the region. With regard to the future of LEPs, I probably don't know a huge amount more than you. What we understand is that. So the message we've got through, as it were, is that there's a strong role for the LEPs and the businesses going forward. They're going to consult with business organisations and local areas to understand exactly what that is, and they'll give details before the summer recess. And obviously they're looking both at the role of LEPs and the geography of LEPs. So they're looking at both. So obviously we'd moved to a situation whereby we got rid of overlapping geographies a couple of months, a year or so ago. My guess is they might look at the difference between combined authority areas and non-combined authority areas, but that is just speculation. I don't know anything about that.
Thank you very much. I can't see any other hands raised, so in which case, with those couple of questions, obviously we're just asked to note James's report. And again, if nobody waves at their screen or indicates, I'll assume that we're all happy to note James's report, and also to formally, not quite, but formally in a few weeks, welcome Helen into role. That then takes us on to agenda item 6, which is a devolution update, and back to James.
Yeah, so as you're aware, we submitted our devolution proposal to government the week before Christmas. So it's now in Whitehall with the minister and the department. We've informally spoken to them since then, and they've advised us that they will hold a first meeting before the end of March. Now, we haven't had the confirmation of when that meeting is yet, but what's important is that meeting needs to be both with the Department for Communities and Local Government, but importantly with the Treasury as well, because they hold the purse strings. So we need to keep pushing, but we're waiting on a date from Treasury and CLG as to when we can have that first meeting and firmly set out the timeline for which we'll negotiate. I'm guessing that they're kind of looking at the local government organisation and trying to line the two things up with each other. So yeah, we're waiting for the details from central government how that progresses. But we've submitted it. We, as a region, we've all agreed to our proposals. It's a really ambitious bid. We're waiting on government now.
Thank you very much, James. So I'll open it in case of any questions to James at this stage. If not, we'll just note the verbal update that James has just given. So thank you very much for that, James. And that takes us on to agenda item 7, which is regards the Yorkshire and Humber Climate Commission. And I'll hand over to Wallace to introduce this.
Thank you, Chair. There was a paper that went to the Yorkshire Leaders Board a few months ago that has been circulated to local government North Yorkshire and York members. So I'm not intending to go through all of the detail within that. I'm assuming that members have had the opportunity to read it and digest. What it did have attached to it, though, which I hope is helpful, is a little bit of a summary as to what the regional Climate Commission is going to be about, what it is, what are the things it's going to be focusing on, and the sort of things that it's not going to be involved in. So hopefully that gives a little bit of background. And then it also contains some information about the structure of the Commission and where the level of representation is going to come from. So what I thought I would do is really just focus what I'm going to say on where things are and how things have moved on since that paper went to the Leaders Board, because actually there's been a great deal of progress that has taken place over the last couple of months, and particularly since January. So as things currently stand, we are looking to launch the Regional Climate Commission on the 17th of March. There is a launch event that's been planned for the evening of that date. And there is information that will be going out that will give details of how you can register to attend. If any member hasn't received that, please let me know and I'll ensure that details for registration are sent on. And it would also be useful if that could also be shared with networks as well. So ahead of the launch of the Commission, we've been going through a process of seeking potential applicants for the role of chair and also for the commissioners that will sit on the panel. I have a date in the diary for next week for interviews for the role of chair. There have been some strong applicants, so hopefully by the end of next week there should be an independent chair appointed for the Commission. We've also had somewhere in the region of about 60 potential applicants for commissioners. Certainly the last conversation I had with the team that's pulling all of this together, we got to the point where about 24 commissioners have been appointed from a range of different backgrounds and sectors, covering water, gas, electricity, the renewables, representing transport, housing, food and drink, the trade unions, the Environment Agency, the NHS, and various environmental groups as well. So things are progressing on that front really good, and it does look as if by the time that the Commission gets up and running after the 17th of March, there'll be a really strong group that's in place to support the work. And then we are, as I say, looking to launch on the 17th of March. And the intention is that there will be a guest speaker attending. That will be Lord Devon, who is involved in this sphere nationally. He chairs the Environment Agency. And then more than likely we'll also be seeking other speakers to say a few words during the launch as well. It's likely that soon as the Commission is launched, the two initial areas of focus will be around jobs and skills and resilience, with a particular focus on the links between climate resilience and flood resilience. So clearly that's quite an important agenda for many members that's in the meeting today. And then we will also be looking to pull together a regional position ahead of COP26 later on in November, to ensure that there is a presence at COP26 for Yorkshire and the Humber. Chair, there is the intention to appoint 4 political vice chairs, and where we are so far is both South Yorkshire and West Yorkshire have appointed their political vice chairs. Mayor Jarvis is representing South Yorkshire, and Councillor Hemingway from Wakefield is representing West Yorkshire. Humber are hopefully going to be appointing their vice chair shortly, and I'm hopeful that we can appoint the vice chair for North Yorkshire and York from this meeting today. The intention is that the political vice chairs, and they will be political appointments, will be there to support the independent chair, but actually to have a reasonably high profile presence in the media, making sure that the issues around climate change and how it affects Yorkshire and the Humber is very strongly advocated on behalf of the region by the political vice chairs. So it won't just be a representative role, it will be about the vice chairs actually being quite visible in terms of supporting the agenda, and then obviously making that connection back into the Yorkshire Leaders Board. So on that note, Chair, I'll happily take any questions. I hope that gives some helpful background information, and if a decision is made, I'll ensure that that's fed back into the team that's doing the arrangements ahead of the launch on the 17th of March.
Thank you very much for that, Wallace. And as you say, the paper went to the Yorkshire Leaders Board, and the recommendations that are attached in the paper here were agreed, subject, as you say, to that nomination of vice chairs from the different sub-regions. So I'll open it to colleagues for any questions or comments. Councillor Les.
Keith, I think I was about third on the list. I think it was Mark first and then Angie.
Oh, so you'll confuse me, Carl. I'll have to go back round. So you're Councillor Crane. I'll knock Carl off now.
I want to come in.
It's lovely to see you all virtually. I do worry about people whose hair looks immaculate, because you'll have to explain to me how you can do it. But that wasn't aimed at you, Chair. I think the report today was very good and very promising. It looks like we're on a good path for this. So thank Wallace for the update, and I'd like to propose Councillor Cooper as our vice chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Dale.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would just like to second that proposal for Councillor Cooper, because I know it's something very close to his heart, and I think that's my grandson. I apologise, knocking all the mats off the table. I know it's something very close to his heart, especially with his county head on.
Thank you very much for that. Jim.
Thank you, Wallace. I was just looking at the structures of the representation and the objectives for net zero and protecting nature. And I was wondering, in the area, I think there's 3 national parks and at least 2 AONBs. How would they feed in or relate to the process?
Yeah, so there certainly there will be the opportunity to feed in. We haven't completed the recruitment exercise for commissioners. One of the themes that we'll be looking to take forward is around natural England and the environment. So we will be actually looking for a nominee to be able to effectively represent that area of activity, Jim. So I'll probably just need to go back and just double check whether there is representation that will sort of adequately reflect the interests of the AONB areas and the national parks. Certainly the Environment Agency is represented.
Can I come back?
But clearly that's different. So I'll need to just double check that the national parks are involved.
Sure.
Please, Jim, do. I don't know if others are experiencing it, but Wallace's audio is a little bit jittery. So I'll mute Wallace for a second, just in case it's affecting others, and go back to you, Jim.
I welcome that. I just think that there's probably a bit of a gap there, in honesty. I mean, Natural England and the Environment Agency are very different organisations to the national park authorities, and given there's 3 national parks and at least 2 AONBs, I'd have thought if they don't fit, I know that they end up as part of the leaders board, but I would have thought they're certainly not it counted in the local combined authorities. So perhaps if you could look at that, I'd be very
Yes, I will do. As I say, there's certainly scope in terms of the number of commissioners that we're looking for to make sure that the interests of the national parks and the OMB areas are adequately covered. So I will go back and just double check that.
Thank you.
I wasn't really looking for a job, I have to say, but I think there'll be plenty that bite too.
You've always got to be careful when you ask a question. Councillor Les.
Right. Thank you, Keith. I wasn't aware about Richard's interest in becoming the political vice chair, but I do know that you had expressed an interest. So unless anybody wants to withdraw, I'm very happy to propose you and have a competition.
Thank you, Councillor Les. I don't think we've ever had a vote in my 2 years as chair of local government York and North Yorkshire. So if we are in that position, I would go to Richard in a second just to explain that, and probably then facilitate the actual vote in the event that my name is in and amongst them. Obviously have a significant interest picking up Wallace's points around particularly flood resilience and preparations for climate change with a York as well as York and North Yorkshire hat. Councillor Cooper.
I'll just, if you don't mind, wait and hear what Richard's got to say about the voting procedure, as we've never done it before.
Absolutely. Richard, it's up, or Ruth, but I'll go to Richard first.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It is unusual. It's not just in your last 2 years, Keith. I think it's a very long time since we have had a vote. The rules of the association, which go back, state that the voting rights are as follows. National parks have 1 vote each. District councils have 1 vote each. City of York has 4 votes, and the county council has 7 votes. So it is a weighted voting situation set out in the rules of the association in that way, Chairman.
Thank you, Richard. Councillor Cooper, did you want to come back?
Well, since you're going to put your name forward, Keith, and you have 4 votes, and Carl has already indicated that, giving the reason that he didn't know I was going to put my name in, he's not going to vote for me, so I'll propose you. That's 11 of the votes already cast. It does seem to me to be an extremely weak reason from the leader of the county council to support you simply because he didn't know I was going to put a nomination in. That, to me, doesn't seem like the best use of a democratic mandate, it should be the best person for the job. And I'm happy to describe why I'm the best person for the job. But if it's already stitched up between the proposer and the seconder, because you've spoken about it beforehand, I'm not sure there appears to be a great deal of point.
Thank you for that, Councillor Cooper. So I'll just wait in case there are any other comments or questions. Just wanted to check then. So as far as I'm aware, both nominations still stand. Jim, did you want to come in before I go back to Richard?
Sorry, in new territory for me, but it says that there'll be rotating vice chairs. How long would these terms be for?
Wallace?
Unmute myself. Well, the appointment of chair is for 3 years. As far as I recall, the intention was that the vice chairs would serve a similar term, but I suppose it's within the gift of each sub-region as to whether they wish to rotate it on a more frequent basis. I don't think that the terms of reference of the Climate Commission expressly says that it must be the same person for 3 years. But I suspect that they were looking for the appointment to be for a 3-year term, but I don't think that that's laid in tablets of stone.
Thank you, Wallace. Another question for me, actually, related to that. Although, from memory, the Yorkshire Leaders Board didn't stipulate substitute arrangements, and whether we could do that for York and North Yorkshire, just in terms of diaries and pressures and the number of things that are going on, which might partly answer that, because presumably substitute could be from a different authority. And then picking up Jim's point, we could agree to look at this annually and decide if we wanted to make the same appointment or we wanted to switch it at that point, for example. Any thoughts on that, Wallace?
Yeah, again, the commission is new, so the constitution of it at this stage isn't set in tablets of stone. So I don't think that there would be an issue really if local government North Yorkshire and York wanted to ensure that there were substitute arrangements in place in the event that the nominated vice chair couldn't attend. My view would be that that would be within the gift of North Yorkshire and York. The intention is to have about 4 meetings a year. So the actual physical formal attendance at meetings isn't going to be particularly onerous, but inevitably there will be activity outside of the formal commission meetings, particularly in relation to the panels and working groups that they are seeking to establish.
Thank you very much. So certainly if those that propose were willing and those that were nominated, I'd certainly be happy to say if in the event that we have a vote that the other candidate is the substitute, to ensure that York and North Yorkshire representation, and equally very happy to pick up Jim's point that albeit on a 3-year cycle as chair, that as local government York and North Yorkshire we review progress of the commission and our representation in it more frequently than that 3 years, if that helps. I can see some nods, but any comments on those suggestions before we then go back to Richard? So Richard, we've got two nominations. Because I'm one of them, probably best to not chair the actual vote. If you could do that, if we're going to that, and then we'll pick up after that suggestion of also putting forward a substitution.
Okay, so if we're voting on between Keith Aspin and Councillor Cooper for the vice chair.
Sorry, Richard. Sorry to interrupt. Councillor Cooper has just indicated. So just before you do, just in case, Councillor Cooper.
I would like, Chair, just to say a few words to support my nomination.
Sorry, you said you were not going to.
No, I said I'd like to hear from Richard about the procedure first.
No, then you said you weren't going to, but by all means.
That's very kind of you. Thank you very much. and I just note that you haven't been seconded yet. What I'd like to say to members is I think irrespective of predetermined votes, and I hope people may reconsider that I want to do this because I'm passionate about it. Carl may remember that I moved the net zero emissions motion at North Yorkshire County Council, and that was supported unanimously at that council. I successfully altered a motion for employee-free parking at North Yorkshire again, to instead emphasise subsidised sustainable alternatives by employers. I propose a carbon reduction programme in recognition of the climate emergency at Harrogate Borough Council, which won plaudits from the Secretary of State for the Environment, and also from a local scientist who's a member of the UN Independent Panel on Climate Change that we know as the IPCC. I've successfully campaigned against Relief Road through the countryside in Harrogate, through the Nid Gorge, and worked alongside the local MP and worked cross-party to do that. That was a successful campaign. And following on from that, I've been an enthusiastic and vocal supporter, even in the face of some anti-public opinion, to the County Council's active travel campaign in the Harrogate district. I set up a climate change coalition in the Harrogate district, and I've piloted that through to independence from the council. And I also set up a cabinet role last year dedicated to carbon reduction and sustainability. It's called the Cabinet Member for Carbon Reduction and Sustainability. I work for a Member of Parliament, it's my day job. So that gives us some good links to the governing party in the House of Commons. And the final thing I'd just like to say, although I could talk for some time, because as I say, it's something I'm very passionate about, it's in the genes. My brother is the leader of the Green Party group on Kirklees Council, so politics runs in the genes, even if we don't support the same party, but he's also the Green candidate for the Mayor of West Yorkshire. So I have a broader family interest in the issue as well. So for those reasons and many others, which time doesn't allow me to extrapolate upon, that's why I would like the support of people around this screen for that role. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. I'll have to go to Richard again, as I think Councillor Crane raised a point about proposers and seconders. Just to again check, or sorry, was Councillor Cooper, it might have been, with regards to our processes as an association. Sadly, I'd clock this as just a sign of where we're at the moment in regards to other issues. But Richard, can you help us?
We will just need to maybe pause and just check whether the rules require there to be a seconder, Chairman. This has not happened for some time. Well, I can't remember it ever happening, frankly. So if colleagues are happy, members are happy just to give us 5 minutes, then I'm sure Ruth and myself will be able to just check whether there's an absolute requirement for a seconder, unless there is anybody clearly in the call who would want to second Councillor Aspin.
Thank you, Richard. So I'm quite happy to move to an adjournment. I can't see any other indications at the moment, which would then allow you and Ruth to touch base on our rules. David, did you want to come in before we do?
Thanks, Chairman. While Richard's dusting off the rules, could he also just check whether, in the absence of the chair of the National Park Authority, Neil Heseltine, who's given his apologies, whether I'm entitled to cast a vote for the National Park Authority or not?
Richard, can you look at that issue as well?
Yeah, we'll check that one as well, Chairman. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. So I'll just ask Richard Jackson from CYC to confirm that we'll just go to a 5-minute adjournment so that Richard and Ruth can then come back to us in the public session with what they've found out. Is that okay, Richard?
Yes, I'm prepared for that, Chair.
Great, thank you very much. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Local Government York and North Yorkshire. We're just on agenda item 7, which is regards the Yorkshire and Humber Climate Commission. And there was just a short adjournment in order for Richard Flinton and Ruth Gladstone to get some advice with regards to our rules. So I'd like to go back to Richard, who could just confirm the advice, please.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. And just to confirm that one point was around the seconding of the motion and whether York could second the motion itself. And the advice is that that is the case. And the second issue that was raised was whether an officer who was representing their organisation, whether they could cast a vote in the absence of, in this case, it was the chairman of the national park, but I think the wider point is whether an officer can cast a vote instead of either the chairman or a leader of a council. And the decision around that is that that is not the case. However, if there is an elected member who's a nominated substitute, then they can cast a vote, Chairman. So that's the two issues resolved.
Thank you very much for that, Richard. I'll just again check if there are any questions or comments for colleagues. One thing I'll say is that if it helps, I am inclined to say that I would be happy to be the substitute for Councillor Cooper if Councillor Cooper would graciously accept that in order to avoid a vote. Because I do think that the spirit of working together across York and North Yorkshire on these issues is perhaps more important than allegations of behind closed doors decisions, which of course can be levied at anybody and everybody depending on the situation. And with that recognition of the particular issues for all of our areas, but York in particular with flood and resilience, which are the first themes of the commission. So I'll go to Councillor Cooper to see if we can find a cooperative spirit. I appreciate that on votes you can vote, we can vote it through, but I would rather not have to do that. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you very much. I think we should just have the vote, if I'm honest.
I gave a way through to you being the nomination, me being your substitute, and us picking up the issues. But
if I may finish my sentence, Keith,
yeah,
if you don't mind. Wallace already said that the Constitution isn't yet at that stage of formation where we could say about substitutes or terms of office. So I think that's not a question for this meeting. I do think the question for this meeting is about being able to appoint a member who has demonstrated they have a genuine interest in the issue with concrete examples of how they've acted and behaved in regard to the environment and what they could bring to the Environment Commission through that. I also think it's important we appoint someone with democratic legitimacy. And I don't think having someone proposed and seconded, one of nominees being the seconder and receiving 11 votes from 2 people, while the remainder or some of the remainder don't support that nomination but only have 1 vote each, will give democratic legitimacy for this body appointing somebody to that climate commission. So I think it's important that we have that legitimacy, and the other questions about substitutes and terms of office we deal with further down the line. Once we have a better idea of the Constitution.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Rather than rush straight to the vote, obviously the reason I put that suggestion forward was to attempt to find a way that we could all move forward happily and positively together rather than need a vote, which, as you say, the reason there's balanced voting is to recognise the differences in responsibilities of some of the councils. So my suggestion was that we could nominate Councillor Cooper if we could suggest to the Yorkshire and Humber Commission that there could be a substitute arrangement, which could be me, to pick up the York and North Yorkshire representation. And obviously that can be reviewed in the future. Councillor Cooper's preference seems to be to go to a vote, but obviously we know how the vote balance works. So I'm attempting to be polite and positive in putting this suggestion forward. Do any other colleagues want to come in order to make that issue go forwards rather than necessarily need a vote at this stage? I can't see any virtual hands, which either means you don't agree with having a substitute, which is a little surprising. Councillor Crane.
I'm trying to help you here, Chairman. I thought it was good of you to make that offer, and I think we should take you up on it. We do know there's an issue about whether or not you can have subs. On most of these things you can, so let's hope that's the case here. But I think we should take you up on your offer, so thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor Crane. In which case, I'll go to Councillor Les to withdraw my nomination on that, the spirit of Councillor Crane's comment. Councillor Les.
Okay, thank you, Keith. Happy to withdraw your nomination.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Just two things, if I may. I don't want this to be portrayed as you offering a positive and constructive approach and me not doing. I'm grateful for your offer, but that doesn't mean that mine is a negative or destructive approach. Mine is a practical approach, and the practical approach is that the Commission hasn't yet decided on substitute arrangements, nor has it decided on a formal constitution. They're not at that stage yet. So we cannot, at this stage,
thank you, Councillor Cooper. I think my suggestion was that we can obviously make a recommendation from York and North Yorkshire, and we can then review that in the future as the work of the Commission continues, as Councillor Crane suggested. So with the withdrawal of a nomination, we have one nomination proposed and seconded of Councillor Cooper. Alongside that, a recommendation that the substitute comes is myself, obviously subject to the work of the Yorkshire and Humber Climate Commission, and equally future reports to this body. So I'm going to go to Richard and just check whether in that circumstance you want us to do a show of hands in a sort of formal vote that we're happy with that proposal, or if there's another arrangement. Richard.
I think given the discussion, Chairman, it would be if we could just do a simple show of hands and see if that's the view of the meeting, then we can move on without having any sort of rolled call and going through the different weighted votings.
Great, thank you very much. So obviously got the suggestion, Richard, there, show of hands. Got a couple of colleagues just indicating who I'll go to first. Councillor Colin.
Apologies, Chair, I was showing my hand.
For a vote, thank you.
Yeah, I was ahead of you.
I was going to say probably the easiest way to speed the meeting along. Councillor Dale, were you doing the same? No, Councillor Dale.
No. Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to support the first part of that, but not the second part about the substitute, because I think that does need to come back at a later point, because there may be other members that also have an interest in this role.
So that unfortunately takes us backwards, Councillor Dale.
Very sorry.
We could simply have a vote on each item.
We could do that. Is true. So shall we do that as the easiest way to confirm it? So we have a proposal, and seconder, Councillor Cooper takes that role on the Yorkshire and Humber Climate Commission, and obviously we'll receive reports into the future. So we'll deal with that first. We have Richard's advice that we can do that through a show of hands, given the significant discussion on this. So can I please see those that are eligible to vote if they are happy with that suggestion? Thank you very much. So that's a clear majority of those eligible to vote in favour of that proposal. And then if I then take us back to the suggestion, in the event that there is a need for a substitute, and indeed the Yorkshire and the Humber Commission allows that as the work goes through. If I go to Councillor Les, whether you would be kind enough to nominate me into that role so that I could work with Councillor Cooper on our shared priorities.
Happy to, Keith.
Thank you very much. Jim.
Was there an issue about the length of the term? I just think the way things are going, we ought to have it all tied down.
Right, so let's deal with the substitute arrangements first, and then we can discuss length of term afterwards in a second. So if I similar to the last one would then second that I would be the substitute to work in that arrangement. Are there any other comments or suggestions at this stage with regards to that? Okay, so I can't see any suggestions. So if I could please see those all in favour of that suggestion. Councillor Les probably needs just to check. Yeah. So I'm going to go to Richard and just confirm to me on the number of hands, that's the majority, and on balance in favour of that. Is that correct, Richard?
Yes, that's how I saw it, Chairman. Yes.
Thank you very much. I'll just go to Councillor Colin, who I think, again, that was a virtual hand in favour of that proposal. Is that correct? Thank you very much. So that sorts out the arrangements there. And there was a suggestion from Jim with regards to length of term. I'll just go back to Wallace. I think Wallace's suggestion was that the Commission sees that as a 3-year appointment, but their work is evolving, and obviously we can review that at a future stage if we wanted to, but I'll just check with Wallace, please.
Thank you, Chair. What I will do is feed the results of the outcome of the discussion today into the Commission. So Councillor Cooper is appointed as the Vice Chair. You're appointed as a substitute, and just check with the Commission whether substitute arrangements are appropriate and okay, and also get a very clear view from them as to whether it needs to be fixed for 1 year or whether we can review it on an annual basis.
Thank you very much, Wallace. And if you could feedback at the July meeting, perhaps of this group, that would be appreciated. And does that pick up your concern, Jim?
I was trying to be helpful, Chairman, but yes, I think that does it.
Great. Thank you very much. So thank you all, colleagues, for that. It's always items like that take us longer than some papers you might expect to spend a bit more time on. That then takes us through to agenda item 8, which is the arrangements for future meetings. We've got the dates that have been set out there, obviously noting that the 2nd of July is the annual meeting of this group, and I've done my year as chair, an informal year as chair through COVID, and therefore there would have to be a new nomination from a different authority to take up that role in July. So I'm sure colleagues will get their thinking caps on before we get to July. At this stage, all we're doing is noting those future meeting dates. So again, unless anybody indicates, I'll assume that we accept those. Thank you very much. Number 9 is any business for the next meeting. Obviously, colleagues can raise any topics now, or I'm sure can tell Richard and Ruth outside of the meeting. I can't see any hands, so if you could contact them afterwards if you have any particular business to make sure we discuss at the next meeting. And then agenda item 10 is any other business. I've not been informed of any, so I'll just check with Richard and Ruth that we haven't forgotten to do anything or there is other business. I can see shakes of their head. Thank you for that, which then brings us to the end of today's meeting. So if I could thank all colleagues for their attendance and efforts in getting through all of the agenda items, and I'm sure I will see you in July, if not before. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much, Chair. Bye all.
I can confirm the live stream is now ended.